Good morning. This is me again. They call me Kraken. And this is Liberty Woodworks here in Weatherford, Texas. And so, what we're talking about today, and we just have a bunch of my stuff sitting in the background. By the way, a lot of this stuff is available for sale. So, if it's something that interests you, be sure to let me know. But what we're here talking about today are craft shows. Craft shows have become a major part of our business model, right? And this is how we plan on scaling our business over the next couple of years. And eventually, maybe we'll get it, big enough where we get a brick and mortar building. But right now, we are still a backyard builder. We build at our house, in our shop, in the back. We've added the CNC, and we've done quite a bit of CNC work also, and that has been a big game changer in the ability to do a lot of the things that I do and do it more quickly, right? And there's nothing I can do with the CNC is exclusive. You know what I mean? I can do everything with a router, but the CNC just makes it a whole lot faster and allows me to multitask. And so we've added these products to our craft shows, and things have done very well. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about is one of the I guess, the lessons that I learned right off the bat. Our first craft show was last year. Well, I ain't gonna say it's our first. Our first craft show in 10 years was last year. We did craft shows before, quite a few of them, but our first craft show in this round was last year, and it was at a place called 3D or 4D Christmas Tree Farm. And it was an impromptu, kind of on the spur of the moment deal. We got invited to come by the family that runs it, and they said we would probably do pretty good. I didn't have a lot of product. I grabbed everything that I had. It was $20 booth fee, and we made about $600. So I'm pretty happy with that. And one of the things that kind of taught me was that in one day I can make more sales than I make in an entire week. And I'm not one of these guys that'll come on here and tell you I make like $3,000 or $4,000 a week, because that's not realistic. It's not what I do. I make good money doing woodworking, but I don't make a good enough money to have it as an independent, self-sustaining business yet. We're still working there. But this taught me that doing the craft shows, we could make money, and I was totally unprepared. I didn't have any kind of a setup. We had old ragged out tables. We went at the last minute and bought tablecloths to throw on it. We didn't have a tent. Luckily, there was a cover over the top, so we didn't need one for this event. And we didn't have a lot of product, but we still sold, a little over $600 worth of stuff. Our second event was a completely different experience. So our second event was almost a bust. By then, I had a couple of months. This one happened in March, so it was almost 4 months later, and I had 4 months to prepare. So we came into this one with about $2,000 worth of product, and we didn't do very good. We only sold $300 and something worth of stuff. And one of the things that I learned in that experience was that you just don't jump on every craft show that pops up, right? Some are better than others. And you excuse that noise in the background. That's a big truck driving by. Anyway, some are better than others. And the person that was running this craft show did not advertise very well. The location was a really bad location. Nobody knew that we were even there. There was no signage out directing people that a market was going on that was open to the public. And the foot traffic, kind of expressed that whole thing. And in that craft show, we made $370. It was a complete bust. We sold, our booth fee was $50. And, I was not happy at all. So the next craft show that we did was similar, but it was put on by a local business here in Weatherford. And in the past, this person had been very organized, and their craft shows were very well attended. And And so we got in. I fought to get in, and we got in and signed up, and I was really, excited about it. It was supposed to be a monthly market, and she had built it out as, the best artisan market around, and how, they were going to be bringing in all these high-end customers, and it didn't pan out. She stuck us in the back, so again, there was no visibility. There was not hardly any signage out letting anybody know that there was a market going on. There was a lot of advertising on Facebook, but that was pretty much it. And there were a bunch of other markets going on at the time, so there was a lot of competition. And we did a little bit better. We only sold about $460, $470. The booth fee was $50. I wasn't completely happy with it. I thought there was a lot of things that could have been done better, but I was willing to continue giving it a try, and we were going to continue working with them. We had committed to 3 markets for her, one in July and one in November. And so in the middle of that, the next month in May, we had another market in Decatur. And this one was put on by the Decatur Chamber of Commerce, and it was the best market we've done yet. And so that market, we ended up selling about $1,169, I think is what it came out to. $1,189, I'm sorry. It was $1,189, and it was a really good market. We got rained out. They came in 2 hours before shutdown, told everybody to tear down and get out of there because hail was coming, 100-mile-an-hour winds were coming, and so we had to cut it short by 2 hours. When we were cutting it short, business was actually picking up, so if we had been able to continue, I'm confident we would have sold another $500-$600 worth of stuff. Now, that market was very well advertised, and it was very well put together. And so comparing these 4 markets that we did, we learned quite a bit. And so as we were coming back, we contacted the host for the market that we had committed to 3 different times for 3 different markets, and all of a sudden they had decided they weren't going to do the markets anymore. So she wasn't going to do any markets anymore. And so that left us with really nothing, right? I mean, we had no markets lined up because we had already committed to doing her 2 markets. And even though they weren't the best markets, I really feel like they had a lot of potential because she was pretty organized and she did things fairly well. We just needed to get the advertising out. It needed to become a little bit better known, and so on, right? Well, that's put us in this situation where with her canceling her markets and stopping what she was doing, we really had to regroup. And so we were involved with a organization of woodworkers here, relatively local, 40, 50 miles away from us. And I interact with those guys quite a bit. So I got on there and kind of explained the situation and asked if anybody had any idea of any markets that we could get involved in. And we got directed to a local event coordinator that has a business by the name of CC Markets for Days. His name is Colton. And so we went and we checked out his website, and he has an actual website around all of his stuff, which is something we hadn't experienced before. And he had a lot of information on there, and you have to pay for a membership in order to be accepted into his markets. He goes through and he looks at the photos of your booth, he looks at the photos of your setups, he looks at the photos of your stuff, and he decides whether or not he's going to accept you or not. And once he's accepted you, you just have to fill out the application and pay, and you're in to whatever market that he's got. He has some really, really good markets. We've been, bitten a couple of times in the past. And so I went through and I did some research on all the reviews, and he has some great reviews. With that being said, not every market is a home run, right? Some markets are slower than others, and so you get a market, way out in some small town, and you're going to do small town business. You get a market, in a high end area, and you're going to do high end business. So we made the decision to go ahead and sign up with him. We went to one of his markets. We saw how it was run. We talked to a lot of the vendors there and got a lot of input from the vendors on what they think about how he runs his markets. And we got some input from the vendors on which markets are the best. And we were really happy with what we heard. And so we signed up for one of his markets, and that market is going to be next month in July. We're just going to see how it's going to turn out. Now, keep in mind, this first market that we went to, there was maybe 12 vendors. In the second market that we went to, there was maybe 15 vendors. In the third market that we went to, there was maybe 18 vendors. And so we're going from that to a market where he already has 117 vendors signed up, and he has room for another 30 or so more, 33 more. And by the time that event occurs, he will probably be fully booked with 150 to 175 vendors. So it's a huge difference in the amount of vendors available for the event. We've learned a little bit in this process, and one of the things that we've learned is that, and this is something that I've heard and we've been told several times in the past, but one of the things that we have learned is to be careful about the event coordinator, right? The event coordinator can make or break the event. And if you do not pay attention to the event coordinator, what the coordinator's doing, how are they advertising, right? What type of vendors are they accepting? What is the vibe of the market that they're running, right? After the event in March, April, after the event in April, when I only made $460 something, she had sent out a message on her Facebook page asking, if everybody met their goals. And I, told them no, I didn't. I expected more people. I expected more foot traffic, and I had hoped for more sales. Now, some of that was my fault, and I take responsibility for some of that. Our setup at that event was not the best. It was crowded. There was too much stuff on the tables. There wasn't, the setup just really wasn't that good. And I looked at it, and I knew that there were issues with it. And I knew that we needed to do something different. And I acknowledged that. I acknowledged that part of the problem with my particular sales was our setup. That was part of our problem. We lost business. I'm confident we lost business because of the way we were set up. And, and we'll talk about that more on a later video. So one of the things that we decided to do was expand our setup. So we had two choices. The first choice was that we could either bring less product so that it's not so crowded. And the second choice was that we could expand our setup so that we have a larger footprint. I'm a firm believer that the more you have, the more possibilities you have of making sales. And I do a wide variety of things, so there's not a lot that I wanted to cut out of what we stock. So the obvious solution for me was to expand our setup, which is what we did. We doubled our setup. We went from a 10-foot by 10-foot space to a 10-foot by 20-foot space. We went from having 4 tables to having 8 tables. We went from having no vertical space to using one large grid wall and 2 small grid walls. And that made a big difference in our next market. When we went to the Decatur market, where we did the best sales that we've ever done, our setup worked great. It was an awesome setup. It was, and I really think that the way we were set up contributed to some of our sales, other than the fact that the market was very well done, very well organized, and we will be back next year. And so that was part of the issue. But the other part of the issue was that the market was hidden. It was all the way in the back. There was no signs indicating that there was a market going on. There was nothing to draw people in. There was nothing to get people's attention. The advertising that was done was only done on Facebook, and so the only people that ever saw the advertising were people that were friends with the owner, or on a page that the owner was on, or friends with one of the vendors, and all of that. And so there just really wasn't a lot of foot traffic. And the fact that there were several other markets going on in the same town at the same time within blocks of each other, it just really hurt things. And all of those things are things that could have been dealt with had the event coordinator coordinated a little more, right? And I'm trying not to be critical, because she is good at what she does, but things just, in my opinion, could have been done a little bit better to bring in more business, right? And that wasn't done. All right, so I mentioned that, and they didn't take it very well, right? That's another thing that I've found, is that a lot of times people don't take criticism very well. They take it as a personal attack, and instead of looking at it and seeing if the comment had any merit, they just, instead responded, well, you need to pay more attention to the market that you're in. This is more of a farmer's type market. People come here to buy home-baked and home-cooked goods and vegetables and plants and stuff like that, and your stuff is really kind of high-end and expensive, and, people aren't going to be here for that. But that's not how the market was built. The market was built as an artisan's market, right, which is people like me who create artistic, useful products. And so, it is what it is. You take it as a learning experience, and they were right? So they were right. The market was not a good fit for my product. The market was not what people wanted to buy. My stuff was not what people wanted to buy who came there. But with that being said, it was billed as, an event that was going to be geared towards artisans. So that's why I was excited about it. So, it's just not the type of people that turned out to it. So the biggest lesson in that is that you need to really pay attention to your market. You really need to pay attention to where it is that you're setting up and what type of things people are coming there to buy, which is why people tell you before you go to a market to do your research on the market. Go there and look at the products being sold, walk through the market, see if your stuff is a fit. And, it is what it is. We can only move forward from here, and we can only try to do better from here. We have corrected all the issues, or most of the issues, with our setup. We are still working on doing better with that. We're working on making it even better. We're working on more display ideas, and we're constantly working so that it's a more efficient, more eye-catching, more inviting environment for people to come into. And that's kind of what I've got for this. So the big takeaway for that is that your stuff, your product, whatever that product may be, doesn't work in every market, right? Sometimes the market, the customer base, the clients, the foot traffic just isn't looking for your product. It's not the type of stuff that they're looking for. And if you find that to be the case, it's not always an issue with your price, right? That's what a lot of people will think, is that, hey, your stuff's too expensive, or, maybe your stuff's not expensive enough. That's not always the case. Sometimes it's just that, high-end woodworking products don't fit in a farmer's market environment, right? I mean, maybe that's the case. And so we're in a position right now, or in a situation right now, where we are looking for particular types of markets. We're looking for the type of market where our product fits in nicely, with a customer base that is willing to spend the money to pay for our product. And so that's I guess the biggest thing that I would want you to take away from this, is that when you start doing markets, you can't just jump into any market and make it right? You can't do that. You have to jump in to the type of market that fits the type of product that you're trying to sell. And if you go to the market and you walk around and you look and you see, well, there's nothing here like what I do. Everything here is, crochet and baked goods, breads and jams and jellies and hot sauce and spices and, garage sale type stuff and pens and pencils and knickknacks, and the average price of things are, $5, $10, $15, or $20. You can't really expect that you're going to come in there with stuff that costs $50, $60, $70, $100, $200, $150, and make a lot of sales. You got to know what people are buying and what they're looking for, what they're trying to actually accomplish, what they're trying to do by going to the craft market. And so if you go there and you're not seeing the type of stuff that you sell, then perhaps you need to consider whether or not that market's really going to work for you. One of the things that I do, because I do woodworking, right, and I do a wide variety of things. So I do CNC signs, and you saw the pictures, right? You saw all the pictures that I had through here, so you kind of know what I do: keepsake boxes, signs, cutting boards, charcuterie boards, birdhouses, bird feeders, small shelves, home decor items. Clocks, stuff like that. So when I go to a market, I look for what people are selling, right? Is there anybody there that does say plasma CNC work with metal? Are there any metal workers there? Are there any artists there? Is there any leather workers there? Anybody that's selling leather stuff? Are there any woodworkers there? Obviously, I want to know what my competition is looking like and what they're doing. Look at the average price of the stuff that's going on there, so are people selling things for $10, $15, $20? Is there really a market, there for a $100, $150, $250 item, so you look at that kind of stuff. And if you go there and you see that, maybe there's one person that sells pens, they're selling pens for $3 to $5, and there's another person that's selling ornaments, and they're selling ornaments for, $1.50, $2 a piece, and somebody's there doing 3D printing, and the highest price on their 3D printing is $8, and somebody there is doing bread, and somebody's doing jams and jellies, and somebody's doing hot sauce and spices, and you look around and you see that, the average price is under $50. You're probably not going to do very good at that market, so you want to consider that. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and cut this off, and we'll catch you guys a little bit later on. As always, I would appreciate any subscriptions. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. I would appreciate any likes, any comments, if anybody's reached it this far to the end of it. And if you have any questions, if there's anything specific that you would like me to address, then please let me know and we'll talk about it. All right, you guys take care, and we'll catch you later on. Peace out.